Hi gang, so Liber Imperium is almost with us, and in it come the Legio Custodes, the bodyguard of the Emperor. One of the most popular armies from the first version of Heresy, and now available in the second version. So this video is a guide to the army. I'm going to do a brief overview of the whole army, go through all the units, talk about what they're meant to do, and how you can build them. So standard parameters apply for these videos. I'm going to go through all the units in the army and what they do, but I'm not going to talk about power or how good things are. Competitive Warhammer is not my thing. I think it's a bit silly because whatever is best just changes every few months anyway. And as with all these videos, I'm going to include both the core units from the Liber book and any extended units released in PDFs, but with the Legio Custodes, there actually aren't any of those, so that makes things a bit easier. The Legio Custodes is one of 4 army lists included in the Liber Imperium book, and they've had quite a big change from their original Horus Heresy appearance. In the first edition of Heresy, they formed an army list called the Talons of the Emperor, alongside the Sisters of Silence, but the Sisters have now been greatly expanded and formed into their own army list, so in this video, I'm just going to look at the Custodes. The list in this book is not the longest in the world. It doesn't approach the size of the Legiones Astartes list, but it is quite unique and very, very regimented. As befits the unchanging Guardians of the Emperor, there aren't a lot of options to choose from here. No rights of war or doctrines or anything like that. The Custodians have their own methods, and that's how you're gonna play them, which at least makes them one of the simpler armies in the Age of Darkness. All the basic troops for this army are based around 2 kits, the Custodian Guard kit and the Custodian Warden kit, but everything else is a Forge World resin model, including their vehicles, which are very different from the standard Land Raiders they get in 40k. So before we start the unit breakdown, general stuff. What do all the units in this book have in common? As you probably know, the Legio Custodes are the elite of the elite, the Emperor's personal bodyguards, dispatched to lend his authority to various other Imperial armies. So they've all got terrifyingly good stats, including a base movement of 8 and generally a 2-up armor save and a 6-up invulnerable because of their fancy Auramite armor. Every model in the army is relentless and stubborn, and also every Custodian carries a Misericordia dagger as well as all their other weapons, which if you want allows you to swap all your normal attacks for an instant death one. They're generally armed with weapons that are recognizably Imperial, but just, better in every way than their normal Imperial versions. Custodes bolt guns, often called Lastrum bolt guns, have a slightly higher AP and shred. Custodes las weapons, often called Arachnus cannons or Arachnus blaze cannons, are las cannons of various strengths, but with exoshock and lance. Custodes Infernus weapons, which are their flamer equivalents, are usually strength 6 and often have turret, and they also have access to Adrathic weapons, which are instant death, gets hot disintegration rays. All those will be repeated a lot in the rest of the video. They're just very, very tooled up. They also get the Legio Custodes special rule, which defines specific enemy units as nemesis units, basically anything elite, big, or dangerous, and then gives the Custodes bonus attacks, better charges, and better to hit rolls against them. You can see the theme here, right? They're meant to be an army of champions, elite close quarters fighters, and this theme continues in the single solitary warlord trait you're allowed to give them, which is this one, Golden Exemplar, which gives nearby Custodes units bonuses to their combat results. And that warlord trait can be taken by our first 2 choices here. Our leaders, the Custodian Tribune and the Custodian Shield Captain. Both of these are designed to represent great heroes of the Legio who might have a number of different titles, but both are broadly similar, being Praetor-level terrifying close combat characters. The Tribune is the more powerful of the 2 and can only be taken in an army of 3,000 points or more, and he gains access to one of the most expensive single pieces of equipment in the game, the Teleport Transponder Array, which allows 3 units and their attached characters to deploy via Deep Strike. Both of these characters also have Air Ray Strikes, which disrupt the enemy's Deep Strikers. Both of them come with the standard Guardian Spear of the Custodes, but they have access to all the Custodes melee weapons, which are going to come up a few times in this video, so let's just quickly go through them. As with the guns, Custodes weapons are souped-up versions of standard Imperial weapons with a few ancient Terran relic technologies thrown in. You've got the standard Guardian Spear, which is a souped-up bolt gun on a halberd, with options for the Pyrothite Spear, which swaps the bolt gun for a melter gun, and an Adrastite Spear, which swaps the bolt gun for an Adrathic weapon. They can also take a Sentinel Warblade, a Castellan Axe, or Meridian Swords, which have various fighting modes you can choose from, and then also Solarite Power Gauntlets or Power Talons, which are fancy Power Fists and Lightning Claws. And all these weapons will be repeated later on. That's pretty much all the close combat weapons they can take, aside from master-crafted power weapons. Also, both these guys have slightly fancier armor than normal Custodes, so they get a 4+ invulnerable save, the standard one that most Heresy leaders get. In terms of models for your commanders, there are a few options here. Forge World do make a resin Legio Custodes shield captain, but you can also use the 40k method. The standard Custodian Guard kit or Custodian Wardens kits both give you options for a HQ choice, though only the Wardens kit has the axes, and the Pyrothite and Adrastite spears are available as separate kits from Forge World. Some of the other weapons would need converting. The Talons and the Power Fists aren't available separately. Also, you could use the 40k Blade Champion or Trajan Valoris kits here. As the descriptions say, these are meant to represent any sort of hero of the chapter. It doesn't really matter as long as they look pretty cool. Our final HQ choice is, of course, the fanciest custodian of them all, Constantin Valdor, Captain General of the Legio and the right hand of the Emperor himself. And he's less a fancy tribune and more a Custodes Primarch, or I guess a mini Primarch. He has the Primarch unit type, but he doesn't quite have the strength and toughness and very long list of special rules that Primarchs usually get, but the ones he does have are pretty effective, so he's still a terrifying force on the battlefield. He's available as a character series model from Forge World. Okay, that's it. 3 HQs. On to elites. We'll start with the Heteron Guard. These are the inner circle elite of the Custodians, and they're basically a really versatile Custodian Guard squad. They come in a unit of 3 to 10 models, which is standard for Custodes, with Meridian Swords, but they can swap them out for pretty much any of the other weapons as required, and one guy can take a Vexilla. One interesting thing about this unit is that any of them can take a Presidium Shield, which gives them a 5+ save, so you can have shield and spear guys or shield and axe guys, which isn't possible in the normal troops units. In terms of models, there's no perfect solution for these. Both the plastic kits give you some of the options. The Custodian Warden set looks the part, but you don't get shields, whereas the regular Custodian set gets shields, but none of the axes. But once you've got a few basic units built for your army, you'll have so many spare weapons, it's likely that this just isn't going to be a problem. Also, given that they come with Meridian Swords and those aren't available yet, I'd expect a Forge World kit at some point in the future. Next up is the 30k era Custodian Terminators, the Aquilon Terminator Squad. This is essentially a squad of cataphracti Terminators, but who can move at full speed because of their fancy Custodian physiology. They come in squads of 3 to 10, they can take Solarite Power Gauntlets or Power Talons, and then either Lastrum Stormbolters, Infernus Firepikes, which look very iconic, and Adrathic Destructors, those are the disintegrator weapons from earlier. They're also bulky 4, so they're huge. One notable thing here is that unlike in the Legions list, your commanders can't take this sort of armor. Aquilon Terminators are noted as being really rare, almost unpopular forms of armor, deployed only when missions really need them. They're a Forge World resin kit, and it's worth saying that no 30k Custodes do not get access to the 40k Alarus Terminators, which are plastic, and though maybe you could take that kit and put some great big shoulder pads on it, the weapons options are quite different. Finally, the first of the 3 Custodian Dreadnoughts is next. The Contemptor Achilles pattern is a Contemptor Dread with a massive Guardian Spear and a Power Fist, and with its secondary weapons upgraded to the fancy Custodian versions, Lastrum Stormbolters, Adrathic Destructors. It comes as a really nicely detailed standalone Forge World kit. Those 3 are our only elites, so we move on to troops, and we have 2 basic options here. The Custodian Guard Squad is the mainstay. 3 to 7 Custodian Guard armed with spears or axes, and where one can take a Magisterium Vexilla. These are built from the standard Custodian Guard box, though if you want the axes, you're going to have to rescue those from the Warden's box. And if you want to take special weapon spears, the Pyrothite and Adrastite ones, well, all of them can take them, but they come separately from Forge World. And then the second troops choice is the Sentinel Guard squad, built from the same box, armed with Sentinel Warblades and Presidium Shields. The options for these guys are more brutal. They can take a flag, but they can also swap their Warblades out for Solarite Power Gauntlets or Power Talons, which, as I mentioned, don't seem to be available anywhere yet. Right, that's all the troops choices, but to move them around, we have the first of the crazy curvy Custodes Grav tanks, the Coronus Grav Carrier. This is actually the biggest of all 3 grav tanks and your only dedicated transport option, with a capacity of 18, which is actually only 6 regular Custodians. but the vehicle does have deep strike and outflank to get it where it needs to go, and all the grav tanks have flare shields to protect them a bit more than a regular Imperial vehicle. These are available from Forge World as a resin kit. Next up is the fast attack choices, and the first unit is the Custodes Specialist Jet Bikes. Every army gets jet bikes. The Agamatus Jet Bike Squadron riding Gear Falcon jet bikes. These are meant to be heavy assault units. They're heavier jet bikes than the 40k Dawn Eagles, and each carries quite a serious heavy weapon, and the riders are armed with Solarite Power Lances. They're available individually from Forge World, but you need 3 to build a unit. Then we've got our support skimmers, the Pallas Attack Speeder Squadron. They also have flare shields, but other than that, they're pretty light skimmers armed with, as usual, ridiculous Custodes guns, Arachnus multi-shot las weapons as standard. Then our third and final fast attack choice is the Custodian Venatari Squad. Lighter armored Custodians with swords, bucklers, and jump packs that, in the theme of this list, are a bit better than the Astartes ones, giving them a 14-inch jump range. They can also swap their swords and bucklers for a Venatari Lance. They're available as a resin squad from Forge World. Then we get to heavy support. We start off with the Sagittarum Guard. These are Custodians armed with an Adrastus Bolt Caliber, which is a combi weapon that can either be a souped-up heavy bolter or a one-shot Adrathic Disintegrator Ray. Unlike many of the other options, these are actually sold as a resin upgrade kit for the plastic Custodian box. The unit is 3 to 10 models, but the kit gives you enough to do 5. We then get our medium-sized grav vehicle, the Caladius Grav Tank, armed with Elastus Accelerator Cannons or Arachnus Blaze Cannons. Again, this is a deep-striking, outflanking vehicle with a flare shield for extra protection, and it's available with either of the turret weapons from Forge World. And then we're on to the other 2 unique dreadnoughts. If the Achilles was a Contemptor version of a regular Custodian Guard, then the Galatus is the Contemptor version of the Sentinel Guard, armed with a massive version of the Sentinel Warblade and a massive version of the shield too. Seems like a slightly weird choice in the heavy support slot, but there's not a lot of competition, and the Custodes do have some cool elite units to fill out those slots anyway. He's available as another beautifully detailed resin dreadnought kit, but he's got nothing on the final dreadnought, the most iconic of Heresy Custodes models, the Telamon Heavy Dreadnought. This guy is huge. He's actually bigger and tougher than a Leviathan, though he doesn't have quite as many weapon options. The standard model comes with Cestus gauntlets with plasma projectors, but those can be swapped for Arachnus Storm Cannon or Elastus Accelerator Culverins. He's available as a separate body and various different arms from Forge World. Finally, the Custodes get 2 Lords of War, and they're both variants of the same absolutely massive design. These flyers are huge. The Orion Assault Dropship is a 600-point, capacity 24, again, sounds big, but it's 8 Custodes, lumbering flyer with an assault ramp and a slew of stupidly powerful weaponry. It's also one of those vehicles that can carry dreadnoughts. And then its cousin is the Ares Gunship, a model almost as big and which replaces the transport capacity with fire bombs and even heavier weaponry. Obviously, both these vehicles are available from Forge World at the sort of price you'd expect. And there we go. Just a short one, really. The Custodes list is only 18 units, and many of them share the same list of weapons, upgrades, and special rules. I mean, there's a lot of rules per model and a lot of confusingly named weapons to learn, but once you've got used to them, they're probably one of the faster, simpler armies to collect in Heresy, and the cost of their Forge World models is slightly offset by the fact that so many of their units are able to be built from the same 2 plastic Custodian boxes. And at a minimum of 45 points per Custodian, you don't really need that many to start with. I think we're going to see quite a lot of Legio Custodes armies, or at least allied detachments, on the battlefields of the Horus Heresy. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like more of these unit guides, there's a Mechanicum and Astartes versions on my channel, both of which are significantly longer than this one. And if you'd like to support the channel, then like, subscribe, and there's a link to the Patreon in the thing below. See ya.